It's Lara here with Witchy Wednesday for the week of February 7th to 14th, 2018. So thanks for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this and to comment and, like, subscribe, spread the word, all of that stuff. It really helps me get the word out. And, I want to just also say thank you so much to those people who sent me messages about the video last week. I got some messages, from some people that said it was quite helpful to them. And that's really good to know. I'm glad that it's resonating. And, I would do these videos if nobody was watching, honestly, because I started this it was something that I just wanted to do, and makes me happy. So I love doing it. But of course I love the feedback, and I love to know that things are landing with people, right? And if you ever have any questions, please reach out to me. I'm happy to answer your questions. And I'm loving doing the readings for people. I do astrology readings and tarot readings, or a combination of both. I also work one-on-one with people over longer periods of time, that kind of thing. So, if you're interested in finding out sort of what I do and how I might be able to help you, then you can click on the link below in the description box, and it will take you over to my website, and you can check that out. There's a variety of things there to choose from, of options. So, and actually, what I wanted to say to you was, you'll hear me in these videos say sometimes, it depends where this falls in your chart, your own personal natal chart, right? And so when I do a reading for people, whether it be, if it's just like I do these readings where it's like a 30-minute sort of taste of astrology reading. I give you the basics of your chart, right? So even in those readings, I do a little astrology 101 kind of lesson at the beginning, where it just sort of, it helps you, because I send you your birth chart to have a look at, to follow along with the reading. And so this helps you kind of navigate, right? To understand, well, what does this mean? Like I have the chart for today here, for example. So, like, what does all this stuff mean? So I kind of explain to you the basics, so that when I am doing these videos and you're watching, and I say it depends where, for example, last week's lunar eclipse fell in your chart, in what house, then you can look at your house and say, well, the lunar eclipse was in Leo, so what house does Leo fall in my chart? So that's how that works. Okay, so I'm gonna just talk a little bit about the after effects of the eclipse last week before I move into this week. So last week's lunar eclipse was in the sign of Leo. And I talked a lot about it in the video last week. So if you missed that, you could go back and have a listen, because the effects of an eclipse last longer than just a regular full moon, right? So it will, this will play out. These energies will sort of play out in a cycle over the next 6 months or so. So last week's video is still very, very relevant. So you may have, had an emotional time over the few days of the eclipse, and you may still be feeling that. You may be sort of having a bit of an eclipse hangover right now. The lunar eclipse, which is when the sun and the moon are opposite each other in the sky, and it's always at a full moon, that is a time of sort of, the moon is our emotions and our inner life, our personal life, things that are close to home, that kind of thing. And so those are the kinds of things that tend to get stirred up for us during a lunar eclipse, right? It's more of an internal process usually, or things that are close to home. We may have, some inner awakenings, or deep-seated emotions that come to the surface, that kind of thing. So you may still be, feeling the effects of that, and any kind of crisis that may have occurred for you. And when I say crisis, again, I don't mean like necessarily some major, big, explosive event that happened, although it could be. But so you may be still feeling the effects of that. And we're heading into a solar eclipse next week. And I'm going to talk more about that next week because there'll be another video before then. But that will be a solar eclipse. And a solar eclipse is always at a new moon, and it's when the sun and the moon are beside each other or conjunct, as opposed to opposite, which is the lunar eclipse, right? And so solar eclipses tend to have a bit more of an external focus. So things on the outside, things that may be more visible, those kinds of things are things that our awareness will be drawn to, where the big events may happen, right? But it's an interesting sort of interplay, and I'll talk more about that today and again next week. So, I'll touch on the moon a little bit right now. And so, as I've said to you before, the moon is the fastest moving planet, right? And so it tends to have an effect on us, more noticeable effect on us on a more day-to-day kind of basis. And, you know, it's also the planet closest to the Earth. So we feel that the most, right? And other planets don't move as quickly as the moon. I mean, some planets like Mercury, they also move quite fast, but not as fast as the moon. So, you know, the moon changes signs every sort of couple of days, 2.5 days. Mercury changes signs about every week or so, you know, and then it goes from there with the other planets all the way up to Pluto, who only changes signs like every 20 years. So spends about 20 years in a sign, right? So those are, you know, it sort of goes from the smaller cycles to the bigger cycles, right? So the moon, if we follow the moon positions, and we pay attention to where the moon is on sort of a daily or every couple of day basis, we may notice how our emotional responses to things fluctuate, right? So the moon is in Scorpio for the next couple of days. That's quite deep and intense, and really, you know, likes to get to the bottom of things and dig for the secrets, and really is not about the superficial. It's really deep-seated, transformational energy is Scorpio. So then the moon is moving on Friday into Sagittarius. So, you know, things will probably lighten up for us a little bit. We may be into having a little adventure, or learning something new, or you know, maybe taking a short trip, that kind of thing. And which is great energy for a weekend, right? And then on Monday, the moon moves into Capricorn. Perfect to start their work week. Capricorn, nose to the grindstone, get the job done, you know, being responsible, all of that kind of thing. And then on Wednesday, the moon moves into Aquarius, and we'll have the solar eclipse. Because the sun will also be in Aquarius beside the moon. So I'll talk more about that then. The other major sort of planetary shift that's happening this week is that Venus, Venus is the planet associated with relationships and love, and also with things like our resources, and what we value. So Venus is moving from Aquarius into Pisces on February 10th, and it will be in Pisces until March 6th. So what we'll probably find here is when Venus really likes to be in Pisces, so it's kind of, you know, we may find ourselves feeling very compassionate, really willing to forgive, you know, sort of just loving the whole world, right? And also, the thing to keep in mind, though, when the moon is in Pisces, it's a really lovely time, but Pisces doesn't have a lot of boundaries, right? Pisces is watery, right? And the two fish swimming in different directions, and it's very ethereal, that kind of thing. It's hard to pin down. And so we have to watch our boundaries when Venus is in Pisces and not be looking to save people, and not be looking to lose ourselves in the other kind of thing. So it's important, you know, to just be mindful that there's a potential for that kind of energy. And so we just have to, it's great to want to, you know, merge with other people, and, you know, love and forgiveness and compassion, and all of those kinds of things. But we also have to remember our boundaries, especially those of us who have difficulty setting boundaries already. So there's that. Let's just, yeah, I have to turn the page here. I took a lot of notes. So what else do I want to say? Oh, just, you know, there will be a couple of aspects happening in terms of the moon. So on February 8th, which is tomorrow, there will be a square between the moon and Venus, right? So the moon, again, it's our emotions, you know, just to put it simply, and Venus is love, relationships, what we value, that kind of thing. And a square is a conversation of tension. And so there could be a little bit of, you know, tension or difficulty trying to get our needs met, would be the best way to put it. And then after that, there's going to be a couple of conversations happening between the moon and the planet Uranus on the 10th and the 13th. So Uranus is aha moments, shake-ups, you know, sudden enlightenment, surprises. It's a planet of electricity, that kind of thing. And so when the moon is having those conversations, then, you know, a couple of things. We may get some surprises or some, you know, even good news on the home front kind of thing. And we also may have a heightened sense of emotion. And that makes sense because that's moving into the next eclipse, right? And our emotions do tend to get heightened around that time. So it's important to, you know, that'll be a time of really, really trusting your intuition. So I want to show you, before I move on to the card, I want to show you, I already kind of gave you a glimpse of this, but this is today's chart. So this is a snapshot of the sky today. It was about, I think, 10:15 when I drew this chart up. So it shows you where the planets and important points are in the sky. And you can see there is a lot of energy happening above the horizon, right? Like in the outer sort of world. And the reason that I'm drawing your attention to this is that, and when if I ever do a chart reading for you, I'll talk about this too, but the planets that are above the horizon, you know, this draws our attention. This is sort of like more energy focused on the external or the outer world, whereas planets below the horizon is more sort of the internal world and maybe things that are happening below the surface or that people can't necessarily see. So you can see all of this energy is happening here, right, at the top of the chart. So very external time. And we may not be paying too much attention to what's going on under the surface. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this next week in the eclipse video because it's relevant. But it's also relevant to the card that came up for us, which is, I'm going to show it to you now, Rider-Waite Tarot deck. This is the Four of Swords. So Swords is associated with the air signs in astrology, which makes sense. There's a lot of energy in Aquarius right now, right? And Aquarius is an air sign. Some people think it's a water sign, but it's actually the sign of the water bearer. It's an air sign. And the eclipse, the upcoming eclipse will be in Aquarius, an air sign. So just take a look at this card and you can see, you know, this is like a knight in effigy kind of thing. And hands are in the prayer pose. This is clearly in some kind of a sacred space. And so what this card is talking to us about is the fact that it's time to pause. It's time to take a little break. And that makes sense because, again, we're right between eclipses, right? So it's time for us to compose ourselves, to maybe have a little R&R, have some contemplation, some kind of a spiritual practice. Fours in the tarot, this is the Four of Swords, are about stability and foundations and, you know, sort of getting control and pausing to get our footing. And so it's important for us to do that right now at this time between the eclipses. And also, you know, all of this energy could be focused outward right now. There are no planets in retrograde in the month of February, which, you know, in some ways is great. It's sort of full speed ahead. And if you don't know what retrograde means, you may have heard the term Mercury retrograde, right? But the other planets go retrograde as well, just not as often as Mercury. But there are no planets retrograde. And all that means is retrograde is when a planet appears to move backwards in the sky. So there's like a stalling of the energy or a turning inward of the energy. And so in the month of February, there are no planets in retrograde. So everything is sort of like full speed ahead, out there, external, right? Above the horizon kind of thing. And so it's important for us to take this pause, like, you know, sort of an enforced break or a stepping back or a bit of R&R, some inner contemplation to get our footing, right? Before we move into the next phase. We don't want to get stuck or stagnated, but we want to take a pause, right? Because if we're always full steam ahead, eventually we just fizzle out or we burn out or we're frazzled and, you know, we make impulsive decisions and wrong moves. And then we find ourselves somewhere down the road wishing that we hadn't or, you know, burnt out kind of thing. And so we need to take these moments, right, of pause. And so I'm going to leave it there for this week. And I hope you found this helpful. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out. If you're interested in getting a reading, please reach out. Please tune in next week and I'll talk to you more about that solar eclipse that's coming up. Okay. Take care, everybody. Have a little downtime this week. Okay. Bye-bye.